Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into a company with a pretty compelling promise. They say they can help you cut through all the guesswork in business using the sheer power of evidence. We're talking about pims.ai. They're a global provider of management solutions, and their whole thing is built on this idea that, quote, evidence-based management beats wishful thinking.
It's a strong statement.
It is. And this deep dive, it's really tailored for you, our listener, so you can quickly get a handle on not just what pims.ai does, but maybe some fundamental principles they use that could help any organization master complexity and, handle big transformations.
Right.
We'll look at their two main pillars: predictive analytics, that's for the data-driven decisions, and then organizational transformation, which is about taking effective action.
And what's really fascinating, I think, is how they managed to bridge this gap between, deep scientific rigor and very practical real-world application. This isn't just academic theory we're talking about. It's about using decades of actual empirical data, plus some pretty advanced tools to give insights you can actually do something with.
Actionable insights, yeah.
Exactly. And their whole approach, it's about mastering complexity, not just trying to simplify it away, which it raises a pretty big question for any company facing today's, dynamic environment. How do you really move past intuition? How do you navigate huge changes with real confidence?
That focus on evidence over just gut feeling, it does sound like a bold stance, especially today when everything moves so fast. But you mentioned it's rooted in a pretty rich history.
Oh, absolutely.
That's where it gets really interesting, right? Almost like they went on a scientific expedition to find the laws of business or something.
Indeed. And you wouldn't guess where it started, way back in the 1960s, inside General Electric. Yeah. This wasn't some consultancy cooked up overnight. It actually came out of GE's own need to understand something fundamental. What actually drove profits across their huge, sprawling business? I mean, they made everything from light bulbs to, nuclear reactors.
Wow, okay.
So they launched this project, PMS, Profit Impact of Market Strategy, a really groundbreaking empirical study for its time. And the results, they were startling, genuinely. They found a model using just over 24 metrics, things like competitive strength, market health, productivity, could explain something like 70% of the variation in profits. 70%.
That's huge.
It is. And even more profound, these sort of laws of the marketplace they uncovered, they turned out to be independent of the specific product or even the country. It even showed why GE's big push into computers back then was struggling, despite massive investment. And it helped them set clear priorities for where to put resources across that vast portfolio.
That's an incredible foundation. But, taking something that fundamental, discovered inside one company, and scaling it up to be a global standard, that must have been challenging. How did it move beyond GE?
Exactly. Well, that initial success, it generated huge interest, you can imagine. Across corporate America, everyone wanted a way to, strip away the assumptions and see what really moved the profit needle.
Sure.
So in 1972, it became a multi-company project, first under the wing of Harvard Business School, then later the American Strategic Planning Institute. By the 1980s, they'd firmly established its global applicability. It was clear these laws held true across different industries, different times, different geographies. And then fast forward a bit, 2005, it joins the Malik Management Zentrum St. Gallen. And then pretty recently, 2022, a management buyout transforms it into the independent pims.ai we see today. And they integrated Malik Management's system-based solutions too. So what you end up with is, over 50 years of accumulated experience, insights from more than 4,500 businesses, and they say something like 25,000 plus years of collective experience across their team members, all supposedly at your fingertips now.
Wow. That lineage is something else. So this idea of mastering complexity, not just reducing it, especially with that history, it brings us to this challenge they talk about, the Great Transformation 21. What exactly is that, this big shift, and how does their philosophy connect?
Right, yeah. The Great Transformation 21, if you connect the dots, they're describing this really profound global shift. A transformation from, let's say, an older, more predictable world to a new, hyper-connected, much less certain one. And pims.ai's point is that the old ways, the traditional management tools, they just can't really cope with these new challenges. Past experience doesn't guarantee future success anymore. Uncertainty is kind of the new normal.
Okay.
Now, a lot of leaders, their instinct is to try and simplify that complexity. But that often leads to oversimplification, which actually makes organizations more fragile, not less. The core insight from pims.ai, I think, is that real resilience comes from designing your organization to actually absorb and even leverage that complexity. A bit like how a healthy ecosystem thrives because of its intricate connections, not in spite of them.
So don't fight the complexity, use it.
Exactly. They use something called variety engineering, which is based on management cybernetics, the science of control systems and communication. It's about helping organizations not just survive change, but actively shape it, making the best use of all those interconnections and feedback loops. Think of it maybe less like an engineer building a simple, rigid bridge, and more like a gardener cultivating a resilient ecosystem that can adapt and sustain itself.
That really makes sense. And that emphasis on scientific rigor, on mastering complexity, it sounds like it's baked right into their DNA.
Absolutely. One of their core values is literally scientific rigor and spine. It means everything they do is rooted in evidence, in data, in really rigorous analysis, no shortcuts. And they pride themselves on having this diverse, globally experienced team. They call them management enablers, not just consultants. People with high-end qualifications from top universities, Cambridge, LSE, Oxford, St. Gallen. And these folks are specifically skilled in these evidence-based, system-oriented approaches. Their client list is pretty diverse, too, from family businesses right up to global giants, including, I think, 5 of Europe's largest corporations and major players in the oil industry.
Okay, so all this deep expertise, this incredible historical data set, it's seriously impressive. But how does pims.ai actually, put it to work for companies now? Their first big pillar is predictive analytics. Can you give us a sense of how they turn all that science and data into actual decisions?
Right. This pillar, predictive analytics, it's all about providing those evidence-based insights for strategy, for understanding customers, for operations. And yeah, this is where that massive database really comes into play. They use sophisticated statistical methods, multivariate analysis, and they've enhanced it with machine learning neural networks to really try and extract powerful foresight from the data.
Let's start with the strategy side, strategic benchmarking. How did that help businesses figure out where they stand?
Okay, strategic benchmarking. It uses what they claim is the world's largest strategic management research database, that's PYMS Benchmarking 4.0. We're talking data from over 4,500 businesses with more than 500 data points for each strategic business unit.
Wow, 500 data points per unit.
Yeah, it's incredibly detailed, and it allows them to objectively assess where a business actually stands in its market, quantify its real profit potential, not just what it hopes for, and evaluate the likely impact of different strategies on long-term success. For instance, their profit potential analysis uses something called the PAR model. It leverages about 15 statistically significant factors, things covering competitive position, the market environment, cost structure, capital structure, and they claim these drivers explain up to 75% of the differences in business success.
75% again, that's very specific.
It is. So the PAR model, it's not just a spreadsheet calculation. Think of it like a diagnostic tool for your business's financial health. It might show that, okay, your product quality is great, but your cost structure compared to competitors is fundamentally killing your profit potential. Or maybe your market share in a niche segment is actually too low to ever be really profitable, even if you think you're doing okay there. These insights help with everything from screening M&A targets to figuring out the best way to launch a startup. They also do strategic peer analysis to see what's realistic for your specific situation and which actions matter most.
That definitely gives a different kind of lens for looking at competitors.
Yeah.
How do businesses usually react when they see that? Their profit potential benchmarked against thousands of others. Is it often a wake-up call?
It absolutely can be. Very surprising sometimes. It often reveals blind spots that, intuition or internal assumptions just completely miss.
And speaking of blind spots, how do they help businesses get beyond assumptions when it comes to customers?
Ah, yes, the customer. This really hits on a key question for any business, doesn't it? How well do you truly understand what your customers perceive, not just what you think they perceive? Their answer is customer value management, or CVA. And this has been refined over 40 years. They've done over 2,500 projects, 40,000 interviews. It's extensive.
40,000 interviews.
Yeah. CVA measures how customers actually perceive your product, your service, your image, your price compared to your competitors. It identifies the key decision criteria, what really matters to them, and pinpoints where you need to improve to boost profitability and growth. So, for example, you might believe your customers love your product's fancy features, but CVA might reveal they actually value your reliable customer service way more, or your quick delivery times, and they'd even pay a premium for that. That's a crucial insight, right? Tells you where to invest. They have tools like a value map, which visually plots where you stand versus competitors based on perceived quality and price. It shows how sensitive customers are to each. And an attribute chart digs into specific strengths and weaknesses, all from the customer's point of view. It reminds me of Peter Drucker's observation, the customer rarely buys what the company thinks it's selling. CVA helps find that gap.
So the big takeaway isn't just knowing what customers want, but really understanding that gap between your perception and their reality and figuring out where the biggest leverage for growth actually is.
Okay. And then moving from understanding to action. That's where operational excellence fits in.
Exactly right. Operational excellence. This focuses on maximizing productivity and performance, especially in industrial settings, like manufacturing plants. Their PIMFAS Global Lubricants and Greases benchmarking program is a good example. It's apparently become the industry standard, they say. It covers over half the global annual throughput in that sector.
Half the global throughput. That's what they claim. Since 1993, it's helped over 250 manufacturing plants understand their competitive position, find specific areas for supply chain improvement, and actually quantify the financial savings. They mention an average OPEX saving of about $500,000 per plant, identified through lookalike analysis. As this is really about making sure you're not just busy doing things right, but that you're doing the right things based on solid, comprehensive evidence and relevant comparisons. Imagine a plant manager thinking they've tweaked everything possible. pims.ai comes in and shows them where they can still make really impactful, evidence-backed improvements, often beyond just small, incremental gains.
Okay, so you get all these deep data-driven insights. You know where you stand competitively. You understand what customers truly value. You see where your operations can sharpen up. How do you actually translate all that knowledge into real significant organizational change? That must be where the second pillar, organizational transformation, comes in.
Precisely. That's the bridge. This pillar uses system-based frameworks and management science to drive that large-scale change. To build organizational resilience, achieve sustainable success, it's all about taking effective actions, managing that complexity we talked about, and making sure everyone's aligned, using their proven methods to get from insight to implementation.
Let's talk about Syntegration and PowerDays. They sound like really interesting, almost accelerated ways to tackle tough problems.
They are fascinating approaches. Syntegration, they describe it as the most effective communication architecture available today. Quite a claim.
Yeah.
It's designed to find optimal solutions for really complex problems in a very short time, just 1.5 to 3 days.
Yeah.
And it involves all the key stakeholders, maybe 9 people, maybe up to 42. The way it works is quite unique. Imagine instead of everyone talking over each other in one big room, you have small, focused groups working in parallel, almost like the facets of a crystal, a platonic, solid structure. Information flows in a very specific, structured way between these groups. This ensures everyone's perspective on their piece of the puzzle is heard, and then those insights get systematically integrated across the whole group. It avoids chaos and, they argue, maximizes the collective intelligence. They report it's something like 80 times more efficient than a conventional workshop.
80 times? That's hard to even picture compared to most workshops I've been in.
I know, it sounds extraordinary, but the reported benefits are significant. Faster decisions, more creativity, genuine consensus building, and tangible, actionable results at the end. The real magic seems to be in achieving that broad consensus and speeding up implementation. Imagine getting 40 key leaders, who might normally argue for months, to agree on a complex strategic direction in just 2 days. And because they were all part of crafting the solution, they feel ownership, they buy in. That accelerates everything that comes after.
That buy-in aspect sounds crucial.
Absolutely. PowerDays offer similar kinds of benefits, but in more modular workshop formats, usually finding solutions within 1 or 2 days. Again, the idea is leveraging complexity as a resource, not trying to simplify it away.
So what's the secret sauce beyond just the structure? Is it the facilitation, the specific questions asked, and are there problems this doesn't work well for? Or is it really that universal for complex stuff? And then within this transformation pillar, there's also Malik Management.
Yeah, it's a combination, I think. The rigorous structure is key, but also the underlying science of how you foster that collective intelligence. It's very carefully orchestrated. While it seems incredibly versatile for those messy, interconnected problems, it probably works best where there's a genuine will for collaboration and finding a shared solution. And you're right, Malik Management is the other major component here. It's positioned as a holistic system for organizational development. They even call it an operating system for organizations.
Operating system for a company.
Kind of, yeah. It's rooted in management science from St. Gallen University, very reputable, and also in cybernetics, that's science of control systems. Think of Malik Management as providing the owner's manual for running a highly complex machine, which is your organization. It gives you the frameworks to ensure everything, from high-level strategy down to daily operations, is aligned and capable of self-correction. For example, it helps companies avoid that common trap of setting big, ambitious goals, but lacking the actual systemic capability, the communication loops, the control mechanisms to achieve them. Their fundamental belief is that management is the transformation of resources into value. Sounds a bit academic, maybe, but it's really about skillfully orchestrating everything you have: people, money, information, time to produce something worthwhile.
Okay, so what's a key tool within Malik Management that really shows this operating system idea in action?
A really crucial element is the viable system model, or VSM. Now, this is presented as a radical alternative to conventional org charts. It's inspired by how systems in nature operate effectively, and it's based on cybernetics and neuroscience.
Inspired by nature. How so?
Well, instead of just drawing boxes and lines showing who reports to whom, VSM focuses on the essential functions and communication flows needed for any system, like an organism or an organization, to remain viable, to adapt and survive in its environment. So imagine you have a big international company, and the regional offices are always battling with HQ over decisions or resources. That classic tension.
Right, happens all the time.
VSM helps untangle that. It helps define which functions must be centralized for the whole thing to hold together, like overall strategy or core brand identity, and which functions must be decentralized to allow for local adaptation and responsiveness, like tailoring marketing to local tastes. It ensures each part of the system has the right degree of autonomy and control, but is still connected effectively to the whole. It prevents those power struggles and silos, ideally. It's about designing the relationships and functions needed for long-term health, focusing on how the organization should work to manage complexity, especially when things are changing fast.
So putting it all together, you can really see how pims.ai offers this comprehensive journey. They start with the hard facts, the deep empirical data, the predictive analytics to understand what is and what could be. Then they move into these structured, science-based transformation methods, Syntegration, VSM, to make sure organizations can actually act on those insights and make change happen effectively. It really is a path from evidence to, hopefully, excellence, built on decades of research, and a pretty unique way of looking at how organizations and the people in them function best. It's interesting, so much business talk is about disruption and agility, but pims.ai seems to be digging deeper, looking for something more fundamental, almost like finding the laws of physics for how businesses succeed or fail.
That's a good way to put it. That connection between the rigorous data and the management science, that's really what makes them stand out. They're effectively trying to provide a set of laws of gravity for business strategy, trying to take the guesswork and just plain opinion out of critical decisions. It reminds me of something Peter Drucker also said. There is surely nothing quite so useless as doing with great efficiency what should not be done at all. Pims.ai seems focused on helping you figure out the right things to do first, based on evidence. And that really leads to an important question for you listening right now. In this increasingly complex, fast-changing world, are you maybe relying too much on wishful thinking? Or are you ready to embrace the power of evidence-based management to really unlock your organization's full potential? What could it mean for your business if you had essentially a second brain dedicated to objective analysis and a proven change enabler to help you transform based on what that analysis reveals?